Alright, welcome back to Lua for Beginners. This is going to be the last tutorial in the Beginners series. So after this tutorial, we're going to move on to some more medium level stuff. Not exactly difficult stuff, but just stuff that I wanted to separate from the Beginners tutorial just because it's a little bit more confusing. So before we do that, I just wanted to show off the official Programming in Lua book. This comes from the people that have built the language. It has incredible resources on every part of the language. It's all completely free, just available online. I will put the link in the description. If you wanted to learn more about the language or you were confused on a specific part, I'd recommend starting here first. Okay? So to finish up, today we're going to retouch on functions. And then we're going to work on loops, which allow us to do something repetitively without actually having to type it 100 different times. So to finish up on functions, let's talk about multiple arguments. So last time we talked about functions, we did something, we made a greet function. So let's rewrite that. So function greet, we put name in here, and then end, and then we just print out hello name. And then we call it, of course, so greet Dylan, which kind of reads like English. Just says, tells the machine to greet Dylan. And it says, hello, Dylan. But what if we wanted to put in a custom greeting instead of just having it say hello every time? We could have it say whatever we wanted. So up here, right with name, inside the parentheses, we'll put greeting as another variable name. Then we'll put a comma. And to make things look nice, we'll put a space. Just like that. So now we're not just taking in one variable. We're actually going to be taking in two. And it works exactly the same way as it did before, just with a different variable. And the only sort of thing that's a little bit different is we have this comma in here. Now, the order does matter. So we have to put our greeting before we give it Dylan. So let's just do this. Let's put another string in here. And we'll make it hello again, because it's a pretty universal greeting. Hello. And then here, just like we did up here, to separate the arguments, we're going to put another comma. And that makes the red line go away. And now, all we got to do is modify the code here. So, since we don't have the hard-coded hello anymore, we're going to use the variable name greeting. And then what the function is going to do, the actual purpose of the function, is we're going to put a space between them. So just like that, we'll have greeting, double periods to concatenate the string, a string with just a space in it, two periods again to concatenate, and then the variable name name. So that should put these two strings together with a space in between them. And actually, we could make it a little bit more fancy. We could put a comma there too. And then at the very end, we'll put in an exclamation point. All right. So now you see we can take in and give an argument or a function more than just one argument. I didn't want to go over too much content in the functions video because it was already quite a lot. We went over scope and everything, so I just left this until now so it wouldn't confuse you. All right, now let's go over loops. So loops allow you to repeat something as many times as you'd like. So beforehand, when we went over functions and I went over reusing code, we copy and pasted the function name 5 or 6 times to make it actually appear 5 or 6 times on screen. But a smarter way of doing that, because imagine we could have something that needs to run 100,000 times, is to use something called a loop. And there are a couple different types of loops. We'll be going over two of the different types of loops today. The first type of loop is a pretty standard loop. You'll find this in a lot of different programming languages. It'll look pretty similar. It's called the while loop. So that's W-H-I-L-E, and you'll see that the word changes color, so it's probably something special. And then we're going to put some sort of condition, just like we did in the if statements. So we're going to need something like a counter. So let's get a variable, and let's start the counter at 1. So while counter, just like that, is less than 5, and then we're going to use the word do, D-O. Going to give ourselves a blank line to write something in, and then type the word end like you've seen before. This will do, well, as it is, it'll actually repeat forever, because let's go over what's happening here. We have counter, we give it the variable of 1, then we go here and we say, is counter less than 5? And then we say, okay, do nothing. And we go back, is counter less than 5? Yeah, it's still 1. So does nothing, goes back, is counter less than 5? Does that forever. So what we actually need to do is we need to tell it, oh, we've done something. So we need to add 1 to counter. So if we think back to the math, it's just the plus thing, the plus operator, but we're going to add it to itself, which is kind of unique. So let's do this. Counter equals counter, but plus 1. So if we read that, we'll see what it's doing. Counter is 1, while counter is less than 5. Yep, it's 1, less than 5. Do this. Counter is, we're giving it a new value. We can do that as much as we want, as I said when we were going over variables. Counter is itself plus 1. So we could replace that with 1 to show you what's going on here. Now counter will be 2. It's pretty simple. So counter is 2 now. We get to the end of here. Doesn't do this again. Remember, the loop goes from the end back to here, just like a function would. This is the whole loop. Reevaluates this. 2 is still less than 5. So it does it again. Whoops. Does it again. It adds another 1 to counter. 3, 4, and then 5 is not less than 5. It's equal to 5, so it stops there. So what we should see, if we print out counter, because it won't show us if we don't print it out, we should see 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. If we want to see the number 5, we'll have to put the equals sign here. Remember that equals always goes on the right-hand side. And we'll run it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's great because we didn't have to write out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We could make this 500 just as easy. You see it actually output 500 numbers. We only typed 8 lines of code, and I've got a lot of blank lines here. All right, so the next type of loop is a repeat until loop, and it pretty much does the opposite of a while loop. So the way we set it up is the opposite. We do repeat, just like that, give ourselves a line to put code, and then until. That's not how you spell until. Until. Just like that. And after the until, we will put our condition just like we would in a while loop or in an if statement. So until counter is 10. So double equal sign and then a 10. And remember, inside here, we're going to need to increase counter or else it'll just keep going forever. Counter is itself plus 1. And we'll print out counter just so we can see what's going on. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. All right, so Lua, hello.lua. There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it does this code until counter is 10. Since we print it out and then we see counter go up by 1, we'll never see 10 output here. So if we wanted to see 10, we'd have to increase this to 11 and so on. So now let's talk about infinite loops, and then we'll get back to the differences between the while and the until, the repeat until. So let me comment this out. We'll keep our counter up there. We don't need it right now, but we'll keep it. So an infinite loop is something that just, it's exactly what it sounds like. It just repeats forever and never stops. So here's a really simple infinite loop. While true, do. Just like that. Put something in here that'll happen forever. Well, actually, so we can see something happening, we'll do counter plus 1, and then print counter. And you'll see, if you run this, there's no danger in running it, by the way. It's not going to freeze your computer. That's just going to keep going on forever. Okay? And the way we're going to stop it is click on your terminal here and press Control C. If you're using the web version for Lua, it's just going to say that your script didn't execute, it was aborted or something like that, because the script doesn't run on your computer, it runs on someone else's computer, and if it takes up too much time, they just stop it. So this is an infinite loop using a while loop. So let's comment that out. Now let's do an infinite loop with the repeat structure. So repeat, we'll take this from right here. Until, and let's put true again and see what happens. You can see that it's not infinite. So when I said the repeat is the opposite of the while, this is one of the reasons. This loop goes until the evaluation is false. So right here, where we put true, it goes until that says false. Okay? This one goes until it's true. So when I put true there, it just stopped immediately. It did all this code and just stopped. Another difference is that this will run the code once and then see if it should have. Whereas this one will see if it should run the code, and then if it should, it does it. So here's how I'll demonstrate that. So we're going to set up the loops to not run, essentially. So you can see here, while false do. This shouldn't run because false is false. It's just going to skip all this code. And like I said earlier, this is the opposite, so this won't run if I have true there. But the thing is this evaluates the condition first and then runs the code. This one runs the code once and then evaluates the condition. So what we'll see here is counter starts off at 1. It's not going to do anything here, so it's going to stay 1. It's going to go up 1 here, and then we'll see it as 2. So let's take a look. There you go. So you can see that it bypassed this code because it checks first, and then it ran this code because it runs the code first. So that's how those two loop structures are opposites. All right, so that should just about do it for the Lua for Beginners tutorial.